Hello there guys, you're listening to Ebird Online and I'm back with another review. And today we're going to be talking about 90 Day Fiance. Tania and Syngin are still in South Africa and Tania is literally clinging onto the relationship by the skin of her teeth. So after I've done a quick recap and review, I'm going to look at all the issues for and against continuing this relationship. So this is 90 Day Fiance Happily Ever After, Season 5, Episode 13, Hot Tempers and Cold Feet. Very quickly before we begin, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, press that red button if you've yet to do so, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. And also you can follow me on Twitter at Ebird99. And please don't forget to press like for the video. If you enjoy my content, it really does make a difference to how YouTube place me in the rankings, so that would be really good if you can just press that like button. So without further ado, I give you Tania and Syngin. So it appears this is the night after the bride. Tania, Syngin and Syngin's family are all going off to the winelands, and this is their last family day. Syngin laments that it's gone too quickly. I'm sure it has, and I'm sure you all need the winelands, so you can drink yourselves into a stupor and take the edge off Tania and her shenanigans. Tania tells us, I'm not sure how his family's feeling about me. Really, Tania? The Ebird's very sure. Let me tell you. 1. They don't like the fact that you screech at the top of your lungs in polite company. 2. They dislike the fact that when they're arguing with you, nobody else can get a word in edgewise. 3. They're very unhappy at the fact that you make Syngin profoundly miserable. 4. The whole family are in disbelief at your sheer disdain for South Africa. And 5, they're not too happy with the fact that you want to reconstruct Syngin and alter him into somebody they don't know. So they go to this wine tasting place and they go in and sit down and talk turns to the events of that tumultuous evening the day before. And they begin, as the Ebird so often does, with a white wine. And so guys, the atmosphere was really uncomfortable, all sitting around the table staring at each other. And Syngin's stepdad announced, in the biggest understatement of all time, "We got to see the real you last night, you're very opinionated." And his mum said, "I felt a little bit hurt." And Tania said absolutely nothing. And his dad continued, "Words are powerful. You think that Syngin's a tough dude, but Syngin's quite a sensitive dude. He's far more easygoing than you are." Syngin's dad, "Everybody is more easygoing than Tania. From the very beginning, I was serious, and Syngin shared with me not too long ago that he's only just getting responsibility." And Syngin said, "Yes, suddenly I'm married and boom! I'm adapting and changing, and sometimes I get a little bit scared." And guys, is it just me here, or is Tania lying through her teeth? She said not too long ago, Syngin shared with me that he's only just learning how to take responsibility. No, when you very first met him, you knew that he was fairly irresponsible because, as you pointed out just the other day, he was 2 months behind on his rent, living in a shared house with a load of guys and working behind a bar getting pissed every night. Tania, you really are a card. And she continued, "I don't want this relationship to be a struggle for the next 10 years. Nor does Syngin. That's why he's divorcing you. The papers will be in the post." And then Syngin's dad said, "If you argue more than loving, there's going to be a problem, and you have to then question if this marriage is the right one." And his mum chimed in, "Some people argue just to argue." And Syngin said to producers, "I love Tania and I really want it to work, but my stepdad's right. If we continue to argue, it's better to end it for everybody." Syngin, you're with Tania. All she does is argue. When she talks, she's arguing. Therefore, you may as well just end it now because that's all that's going to happen for the rest of your life. And so I found this whole scene quite interesting. As you remember in my last review with these guys, I said that Syngin's mum was giving Tania a death stare. And the statement, "I felt a little bit hurt," doubles down on that. But Tania picks up nothing, and she acted as if Syngin's mum had just not spoken at all. Very strange that you would ignore your husband's mum being upset. And of course Syngin's mum's concerned. She's genuinely worried that you don't have severe PMS at the moment, and this is actually your personality. And his parents are looking at Tania somewhat quizzically. "Oh, Syngin's parents, Tania's the kind of backcrap crazy that nobody warned you about because nobody knew that that level existed." And next time we catch up with these guys, Tania has set aside some special time yet again to humiliate herself in public. And Tania tells producers, "We're meeting up with Syngin's 2 ex-flatmates." And we see them walking down the street, and the Ebird notes with absolute boredom that Tania is back to hobbling on her crutches again. "Tania, when you ran out in the middle of the braai, you needed no help on crutches. Your foot was absolutely fine. And now, lo and behold, it's hurting again." And Tania said, "I understand I need to be more patient, as he's in a new country. We need to breathe more and have a little more fun, so we're meeting with Syngin's friends. Tania, they still hate you. hobble away now whilst you still can. And this makes me laugh, guys, because the look on her face as she says, we're going to have some fun and meet with his friends. She knows very well it's going to be everything but fun. And they walk and hobble into the bar. And as soon as they do so, Andrew and James order 4 Jaeger bombs. And I gotta say, Tania's right about one thing, Syngin does like a drink. If he drinks any more shots, he's pretty much going to be flammable. Nobody light a cigarette within 10 metres of Syngin, please. And they all sat down and Andrew said, when I first met you, I didn't expect it to last. I really didn't expect the return flight. Whew, guys, it's a very, very uncomfortable opener. And then James says, how was the braai with Syngin's family? Oh good lord. Tania said, well, I'm not going to lie, I got worked up because nothing's been stable yet with me and Syngin. And then Andrew said, isn't that the whole thing? Isn't that the rush that drew you guys together? And Tania said, I saw so many flags back then. When all these flags came up, I thought, why did I even stay? But it wasn't a big deal back then. And Andrew and James are both in utter disbelief. They say to producers, she saw the red flags, so therefore she's in denial. You saw it and you chose not to believe it. He was blatant and honest. You sold yourself. And I thoroughly agree with everything that they're saying. On my last review, a lot of people got onto my timeline and said, Syngin's a waster, Syngin drinks too much, Syngin's a party boy, Syngin's good for nothing. That may or may not be true. The point I'd like to make is Syngin is as sold. So Syngin has never ever pretended to be something that he isn't. He's never made any promises. And he's never, to my knowledge, represented himself to be something that he isn't. And Syngin's friends have picked up on this immediately. And so back at the table, Tania's still whinging on, and she said, now I'm wondering if you're not going to be what you say you're going to be. And James said, I've got to jump in to defend him there. What about all the red flags that you've just told me yourself that you ignored? And Tania said, no, not ignored, I brought them up to him. And James said, what? In order to change him? And Syngin said, I've changed so much. These changes are absolutely crazy for me. I've not been this committed to anything in my life. And Tania's back to caterwailing. It's been like 2 years. Over 2 years. And Syngin said, yeah, it's been 2 years. We were on vacation. We were separated for 8 months. I was still bouncing around from place to place, having fun. Ladies and gentlemen, Tania's losing the argument royally. So she said, we're not here to argue. Let's not talk about this now. Just stop. And James, God love him, said, no, I think this is exactly what we need to talk about right now. And Tania said to Syngin, you know what I'm looking for and you know what I need. And we've been married for more than 8 months now and I need changes. 8 months? Tania, is it 8 months or is it 2 years? Inquiring minds want to know. And Andrew said, Syngin's completely changed from when I knew him. Changes don't happen overnight, yo. And Tania said, I'm not trying to change you, but you haven't even sat down and thought about what you want to do next year. Oh, good Lord, Tania, Syngin doesn't even know what he wants to do tomorrow. When will you get the memo? And then Syngin said, Tania, it's all about what you need. What about what I need? Why do you need more change from me than I need from you? I love you for who and what you are. And that's real. I love you if you want to be a housewife or... And Tania jumps in, I don't even want to be a housewife with somebody who can't even give me a house. So how can you love that about me? But Tania, as usual, hadn't even waited for Syngin to finish. We'll never know what he was going to say because, as per usual, she cuts him off. And Syngin said, everything will happen, but it can't happen straight away. It will happen eventually. And I get the impression that Syngin likes the word eventually. It's full of promise and hope, but with no particular rush. And James said, Tania, do you admit to being a total control freak? And unbelievably she answered, no, it's like she's never even met herself. And then James said, try to control everything a little bit less and live in the moment a little bit more. And Tania said, but how long should I have patience for? And that's where we leave these guys today. And so what does the Ebird make of all of this? Well, the first thing I'd like to draw attention to is the smoking gun. Ladies and gentlemen, here we have it. She said, and I quote, why would I want to be a housewife with someone who can't give me a house? And so that's what she wanted from Syngin. She wanted to take somebody from a bar job in South Africa, move him to America, and for him to be enough of a wage earner to be able to provide a house for Tania. Notwithstanding the fact she couldn't even do it for herself previously. Syngin is a means to an end, and not the love of her life. And at this point I have to ask, Tania, what do you feel that you deserve? Do you feel that you've worked hard enough? Or that you're a good enough girlfriend or wife that Syngin owes you? And also, before he came over, did Syngin know that you expected him to house you? Or did he imagine you already had a home? I remember very clearly that he was somewhat surprised that you were living in a shed in your mum's back garden. And so it seems to me in this episode that Syngin is really thinking long and hard about if he wants to remain within this union. So I'm going to look at the pros and cons of Tania and Syngin's marriage so that we can assess their chances for making it in the future. So the pros to their marriage are: 1. They genuinely seem to love each other. I think I see the love more on Syngin's side than Tania's. But when it comes to talking to producers and off camera, Syngin quite often says, I really do love Tania and I want to make it work. And I think that's a really big plus point for this relationship. The second plus point for this relationship is the fact that they haven't been together the whole time. So although they've been together for 2 years, they had 8 months apart when she was back in the States and he was in South Africa. And even during that time, they both obviously remained committed to one another. And there was enough of a commitment there for Syngin to think, I can make a life away from my whole family with this girl. And then I think the final reason for them staying together is for Syngin to actually decide, I'm going to pull the plug on it. That means pretty much him going back to South Africa. And that's quite a big change. So I think he's going to try absolutely everything before he makes that big step. However, on the cons for their relationship, there's a slightly longer list. And I think the first and main point is his family and friends almost universally dislike Tania, even though they're not necessarily saying so. Their facial expressions tell me everything. The second point is Syngin's never going to be a big earner. So Tania's thinking she wants 2 or 3 kids and she wants to live in a nice house and buy land. And she wants to be somewhat of an earth mother. And I see them more as the kind of family where both parties go out to work. Syngin doesn't have a trade as such. And I think by this point at 32, if you don't have a trade, I don't really know how you're going to earn enough to maintain Tania and the whole family. And the third thing going against these guys is that Syngin feels he's moving too fast and changing too much already, and Tania thinks he's not moving and changing fast enough. So they're both always at odds with each other. And also it seems that they both want to live in different countries. Yesterday Tania vehemently said she does not want to bring her kids up in South Africa. And Syngin said, I want to buy land in South Africa immediately. And I can't imagine bringing my kids up in America. So I personally think that that's quite a big difference. Where you want to bring your kids up is quite key. And let's not forget, Syngin did manage to throw in there, that's if we have kids. So he's not even bought into the idea of having kids. And she wants to have kids in the next 1 to 2 years. Oh, Syngin, if you're on the fence about having kids, just repeat, put your coat and shoes on. About 180 times in a row until you're in a blinding rage. That will help you clarify if kids are right for you. And there's of course the point that she said to Syngin, you're not my soulmate. That's a ticking time bomb for Syngin as far as I'm concerned. And it's omnipresent in the back of his mind. And then also Syngin seems somewhat homesick. As soon as he got home, he was like, oh my God, it's great to be back. And I know you'd think that because you're seeing your friends and your family, but he seems to be really at home in South Africa in a way that I've never ever seen in America. And then finally, Tania doesn't listen to anybody else's point of view. And she wants to be right so much that she changes her arguments at the drop of a hat, and she also has absolutely no backup for the statements that she makes. And the first example of this was when she said there were so many flags with Syngin. When his friends pulled her up on this and said, if there are flags, you sold yourself. You've tried to ignore them and you thought they'd go away or you could change them. And she said, no, I spoke to Syngin about the flags. You didn't, Tania, because initially you said it didn't matter back then, so why did you speak about it if it didn't matter? In other words, what you're saying is, I always knew what Syngin was, but I believed I was so great I could change him. And the next example of this is the fact that she said, it's been over 2 years. She's counting from the moment they first stumbled into bed on a one-night stand until now. She's ignoring the fact that she's been to Costa Rica. They spent 8 months apart when he was in South Africa and she was in America. And then a lot of the time, he's been waiting for a work permit and waiting for the 90 days to elapse. So this so-called 2 years is really 8 months. But Tania never lets the truth get in the way of a good story. And my final reason for saying that she argues with no backup is because she spent the last 2 weeks in South Africa saying, I want Syngin to change. I need him to change into the man that I want him to be. I need him to be a provider. I need this. I need that. But then today at the table she said, I'm sick of everybody always thinking that I want you to change. I don't want you to change. Tania, which is it? Do you want him to change or not? Really, you do want him to change. You just don't want to admit that you do, because that would make you wrong. But you want to be right so much, you change your argument around. And so overall, I really don't see it for this marriage. I don't know if they're going to be able to make it work. And as we know, Tania doesn't really stick to things, not really. She says, I have plans and I have goals and I want to stick to my plans and goals. As far as the eye can see, you've realised none of those plans and goals thus far. 4 weeks ago, you moved into a rented apartment. I mean, maybe one of your plans was to get married, that's probably one of them, but that's the only thing that you've managed to make work. And the only reason that you've really managed to make that is because you dangled a green card and the chance of a great adventure to Syngin. I don't know that he'd have married you if he didn't have to in that 3 months. And let's look back a bit. You did your course on lotions and potions. Are you still doing anything with that? No, you're not. You don't stick to things. When we first met you, we heard you were a social justice warrior. That was a big part of who you were. Are you still at the forefront of your political social justice? Doesn't seem so. I haven't heard any more about it since the very first episode that we ever saw you, Tania. So I don't see from Tania that she sticks to much. And Tania said that Syngin is immature and consistently fails to make good choices. We know, Tania, we know. You're one of them. But let me know in comments what you think. Do you see any plus points in their relationship? If so, I'd love to know what they are. Tania's a walking, talking disaster. And I don't see it for these two. So guys, let me know what you think in comments and I'll be back very soon. I think I'll be giving you the lowdown on Colt and Jess next time. And just another very quick reminder, please press that red button, subscribe to my channel and make Ebird a very happy Ebird. Also don't forget to press the like button and follow me on Twitter at Ebird99. You've been listening to Ebird Online. Thank you so much for listening. Ciao for now.